Happening.
Let's see.
Oh, what an unfortunate series of events has led us here today, my
Oh
friend.
no. Oh no. Let me
Everything
see.
is good in the industry, but Marsha and I have spent an unbelievable amount of time trying to figure out what went wrong with my computer today to log us on. So I apologize as usual. I'm wrong. Hey, Marsha, how you doing?
Hello. Good morning,
Oh,
Jeff.
look, Marsha just got in from the ball. She had her cotillion, her coming out cotillion last night, and now she just got back in just in time to do this. And I thought it was really cool of her to make time. So thanks for taking time out of your social schedule
You're
to.
very welcome. I thought I'd blend with the logo colors today.
So anyway, we in our first non-functional attempt to be on here when we were talking a little bit about strike news, which is like I talk to a bunch of writers all the time, and I think there was a pretty common view yesterday where it was like, hey, this is really good news. We're going to sit down and talk and everything, and that's great. But like, it'll be really good news when we don't hear anything, like any leaks or weird stuff. It's like, if we don't hear anything for a few days, that probably means things are going really well. And then, of course, the night before everything starts, there's like already a leaked story out there and all this stuff. So we'll see. Hopefully, it's a sincere, ready move to get the industry back, because it feels like we've been at this for a long time and there's been pain inflicted on both sides, and maybe it's time now to sort of let our better natures take place and pay your writers and then pay your actors and then everything will be cool. So we're looking forward to that, and hopefully that just continues along, and we'll know more later today. Even if we don't know anything later today, we'll know more, better today not to hear anything. you know so there we go. So we'll all find out together.
Yes, all
Um,
our hearts and thoughts are going out to everybody in the WGA and the negotiating committee. So go
that's
kick
right.
some butt.
If your village has been destroyed by a volcano, tough luck today. All of our thoughts and prayers are with the WGA, as Marsha said. So there you go.
Yes.
You heard her. She's very cold-hearted in that way. It's like, it's all writers only. Like, whatever tragedy, if there's an overflooding river right now and some, really like, third world place that really needs our help. It's like, sorry, buddy, not today. Marsha's focused on the writers. So there we go. Anyway, like,
Yeah, so we want to be a shining light through all it, and Jeff always says, like, no matter what, we're gonna get through this, and how to build hope and keep going, because no matter what, we have to keep going. So yes. And so speaking of pilots, just real quick, Jeff, a lot of people probably seeing you for the first time, so even though they come to your channel because they're coming from, we don't know which angle, which platform, anyhow, just real quick, everyone knows you for the Flaniverse, working with Mike Flanagan, years on different horror features and TV. But what else have you written? Would you write? And if people have not heard, the story, it's on the homepage of how you sort of your first screenplay, how you broke in. Just real quick, what do you actually write on top of horror? Because a lot of people do email, I'm writing this, I'm writing that.
yep. I sold my first script back at another millennium, back in 1999. The first few scripts I sold were comedies. It was really fun. Producers, Neil Moritz bought the first one. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Had a great time. Worked with a different writing partner then, and then went out on my own and did a biopic type stuff. Set up a couple of those. The biggest one was with Ron Howard attached. And it just, I went through that full development imagine process that was really funny to go through, and strange not to recognize your own material when it got out the other end of that sausage grinding factory, but there it was. And then, worked on other, comedies, did script rewriting and doctoring. There were a few sets that I was on where I was contributing jokes or bits or things. That was always a really fun side job to do. It was always a treat. And then Flanagan and I started working together, and it was just very clear that he was a horror master from the very beginning. And, like everybody else, I always loved these movies too. So we just threw ourselves into that and put ourselves behind it. And then sort of in the last few years, branched out a bunch, sold an action comedy to Screen Gems right before the COVID lockdown time. So we'll see what happens there. Very William Goldman in spirit, just very like fun in tone. It was a really great time to do. Sold a pilot to an animated pilot with John Carpenter that we co-created and co-wrote. And just waiting to see the long, it's an animated horror series, like a continuing adult animated horror series. So just sort of waiting to see what the long gestation period of animated horror brings. I sold a pilot called The Fox that was like a sci-fi futuristic, almost like in the tone of those great 80s movies like Total Recall or something like that, like very like big,
Nihilistic.
yeah, no, big, noisy, huge character, sort of sci-fi, but just a romp, just like a pure romp. And one of my favorite things about that script is that the woman lead of the show, who the Fox was like always seen leaving his wife for, and all this stuff, like blah blah blah. It didn't drop until the very last bit in the pilot that she's a transgender woman, and all of the execs sort of it was like it was fun reactions. And I wrote a music pilot during this time that I'm really looking forward to taking out. I have some friends in the music industry who have some access to some stuff that I think will be really cool with it, and it's like a Sing Street, That Thing You Do kind of thing, but as a continuing series, and it's set in like my favorite time of LA life. So yeah, just fun stuff, like different things. I love horror. It's the absolute best. It's like there's an insatiable audience out there for horror that is always there. And when you give them the real stuff, like the good stuff, like not when you treat them like, oh, hello, like secondary audience or this or that, but when they know you love it and you're giving them the good stuff, there's just like nobody better out there in the world. But now it's like, it's fun too, to just sort of like stretch out and do some other things and revisit some other stuff from back in the day that is kind of fun to live in. So yeah.
Awesome. I know, because a lot of people ask, I'm writing, a historical piece or whatever, comedy, and I know Jeff does horror. I'm like, no, he's written a whole bunch of stuff. And one of the things that you mentioned directors always complimented you on was dialogue. So we know in the pilot programs and the feature programs, you always intersperse dialogue. And, I know you don't just make everything just about dialogue, but you bring into the programs. And that is one thing that the people that come to the pilot program will learn how to use everything, the characters, the world setting, dialogue, into a script. And
my movie hero has always been Billy Wilder, and one of the things I loved about Billy is, well, if you saw from the last YouTube video, if you haven't, shame on you, Billy Wilder. There was literally a guy who won a Best Documentary Oscar like a bunch of years ago, and his whole speech was pretty much, I don't believe in God, but I do believe in Billy Wilder, so thank you, Billy Wilder. And it was like that's how people who are really into Billy feel about him. And like that was my hero growing up. And Billy made, his first movie was a really silly, inconsequential comedy that he made as the director. And his second one was a tense World War II movie. And his third one was the eternal noir thriller Double Indemnity. It was like, I mean, he really made a breadth of stuff. And I think there's no writer that out there, or no director that out there, who doesn't have the ability to cut across and do anything that they want or are a fan of or have stories for. It's just that as a professional, you get some kids, it's always easier to work in your shingle, you know what I mean? So it's like, you find, it's a tough town, and it's tough to make sales and do all that stuff for everybody at every level all the time. So you find yourself like swimming with the waters that kind of work the best for you. And everybody knows me for horror, so I do a lot of that stuff. And like 75% of my business is that entirely. But it's been fun to branch out and feel some of these other things and stuff. And we'll see what's up. I am definitely not collaborating with a very well-known writer whose name you would know on basically what is essentially like a Western vendetta. Like, for sure, that's not happening. So
you just never know. So, and let's go back to pilots. One of the things is, because I met a very brand new writer, I think just starting on their first script, and asking about, I have this opportunity, but will I get to write the pilot? And I'm like, you haven't written the pilot yet? And I had to explain to her the process. And let's just talk in just very, very big terms, because we have a new group starting the pilot program. They're all from different levels, but most of them have written at least 1 or 2 scripts. So have some basic grounding, and I'm excited for them to go through this. But let's talk about just the general business process of a pilot. who actually gets to sell the pilot? And of course, a lot of our audience are not even reps, at all. So
yeah. Look, it happens in all different kinds of ways, but typically the way that it happens is you write a pilot. You write a pilot script. Like everybody, you write the script. Everybody does it. And along with that script, some people write a Bible. I would really caution you not to do that. A Bible is like a contractual step when somebody buys it. It's a long, long document.
And time out, Jeff, real quick. When you say someone buys it, and I think this is where one of the biggest disconnects is, who is the real buyer? Like at
we'll
what
get there
point?
in a second, but it's like, I'm just saying, don't do this Bible. What you need to start is a script, and don't do a big Bible where you bust everything out and all that stuff. That will come later. What you need is also a pitch for the thing. And there's a pretty standard basic way to pitch TV that everybody does, that we can show you like sometime, whenever, but it's like, you want to put the pitch together with your script. Then it's like, you meet, there's a producer who becomes interested, or there's an executive somewhere who becomes interested, or whatever that it is, and all the betweeners in that process. That's a long way to go, like through there. We can do it, like that's a whole 2-hour thing to talk about sometime, but it's like, so somebody's interested. The way that it usually goes is they have a place where they get their money, some bigger entity, or the first place that they'll go there, they'll read the pilot. But even if they read the pilot, the way the TV business works is that nobody's going to read the pilot and they buy it right there and that's it and it's all over. It's all about that meeting to go in and do that pitch from that little pitch doc about your show. Again, not a Bible, like a little pitch doc. You got 15 minutes max to run through what you've got, and tell them about it. You can't overdo it in that moment. TV is sold on the pitch way more often than it's sold on the page, but you still need to put it on the page to get to that point. That's what else you're looking for in there, Marsha.
So I know, because I had some people say, well, I got into the streamer and I'm going to be pitching to them. Are they actually their first meeting through to anybody? Is that the time they make the decision, or how many layers are we talking about?
It keeps evolving, because 4 years ago, you could go into a streaming meeting with an upper mid-level executive and they could buy in the room. They had buy authority because it was the cowboy days of the streaming world. Now everybody is on a much more short leash. So it is hugely unlikely that you're going to go in on this first meeting and they're going to go, done, let's do it. I mean, unless you look next to you and like Russell Crowe is sitting there, or you look next to you and Angela Bassett is with you or something. But it's like, if it's just you, you know what I mean, and your idea, you're probably not going to get that like immediate done. What happens is you go in and you pitch that executive, who may or may not have read the pilot already, and then they got to go pitch their boss, and they got to go talk to marketing, and there's a bunch of little layers that they got to go through before anything else advances. So one of the things to never forget when you're putting together your pilot pitch is you are not so much pitching the story of your pilot as you are preparing that executive to go out in the world as your ambassador and pitch this thing to the next levels above them until it's your turn to come back.
So good for everyone to know. And when someone says a studio is interested or anything, it does not mean that is going to be the decision-making table. Checks do not come out then. And then, so when you say contractually the Bible, when would a Bible actually be required? If it is, when does that come to the table?
It's just the three things that they're going to want from you after they acquire this pitch, or after they start negotiating with you, is the pilot and that pitch document and the Bible. And
when you say that acquisition, so that is after the decision-making level, like the actual, not just.
Yeah, that's after they've made the deal. You're going to go in the first time you're going to pitch an executive, and look, this is assuming you're already there with producers and have gone through that whole thing. Like, what are you really going to do first? You're going to go to a producer. You're going to go to a bunch of them. You're going to find one who wants you. Then you're going to refine tune, which means revise your thing all over again. And then you're going to go in with them to the networks, and it's like, once you're in with them to the networks, you're going to start, like, if the producer is enormous, again, if you look next to you and you see a big giant Hollywood person, then you're probably in the decision-making meeting pretty close to right away. If you look next to you and it's like, you know, you or your agent or your manager, and they're like, hey, buddy, you're going to pitch a mid-level person, and you're going to have to come back at least one more time to pitch the, you know, the next one up, but maybe, you know, two, you know, maybe a couple more.
So writers, please take note. If you get them needing into a studio or a streamer, and like, if they're interested, it's probably one of 50 layers. So just know.
Everybody, I had that when you are working to break in. I mean, I vividly remember in the 9 years that it took me to break in.
Overnight.
This is like, sorry. Yes, excuse me. But yeah, like in like the 9 years or whatever that it took me working constantly to break in, I just remember waiting and waiting and waiting to feel that moment when it would happen. And the real reality was like, it's like a slow moving car accident memory flashback. Like, it's not like, hey, congratulations, it's done, a light, you know, switched and you're now in. It was much more like, oh, that worked, but I wonder if it could happen again. Okay, well, this is working out, you know, but it's probably unrepeatable. All right, well, this has happened again. I guess you got to move there. Okay, well, now people, it's like, it's a slow burn build. And that's why when you ask writers or directors or performers or anybody who does this job, like, hey, how did you break in? They're always like, you know, it's like, it's because it's a crooked, crazy path, number one. Number two, it very rarely feels like there's a moment where it's like, this is it. You know, my biggest this is it moment was I was out, I had sold scripts for 13 years at that point, I think, and I was out running around the lake and a bird pooped on my shoulder. And then like an hour later, I got the call that Oculus was greenlit. And I just thought, oh, wow. So something actually getting made, like this might be it. And I was vested in the WGA pension by the time that something got made. And that was the only time that it made me feel like, oh, this could be the moment, you know? So yeah, it's a very delayed, don't go looking for that moment. If you really want to make this a career, right? One of the best things you can do for yourself is figure out how to get all of your happiness and self-esteem from other places. And it's like, if you do that and you work this thing like a job, you get where you want to go so much faster.
No, and good to know that when a bird poops on your shoulder, that means it's moving forward.
It really does. It's like one of those symbols of like good luck. And I remember when it pooped on me, I was like, oh, this has never happened before. Maybe, you know, like, and then it was like, oh, well, maybe it's good luck. What I was really thinking was, should I shave my head? Can I jump in this lake and get rid of it? Like, should I just end it now? Like, you know, it was like, it was a bad time when the actual poop was on me. So
make sure it was a pigeon and not the raven, because ravens still freak me out. So when I see a whole bunch of hundreds of them on
I
the
did not
telephone wire,
you know,
no.
It was like, it was one of those things where like, as I was driving home, it was very hard not to look at like the poop in your hair. You know? Yeah, it was a tough day. I'm still, you know, still can't get over it.
You know, it's just amazing. And I mean, you know, I've known you for over a year now, and it's like the stories, like there's still stories I never hear about. Like, wow. I would follow up with you about the one that you sold a few years ago. Anyhow, because I don't think you mentioned it. But real quick, okay, so back to pilots too. Another question is, everyone's thinking pilots are written a certain way. Like they all ask, what is the structure of a pilot? And, you know, I tell them that it varies. It depends on what you're trying to write. So just very general, you know, for a lot of people who are interested in taking our next pilot program, just highlight what they get out of the pilot program, because the structures are all different, you know, broadcast versus streaming, and who knows what's going to happen with the advertising now, all that. But just talk generally about that, what you're covering in the pilot program.
Yeah. Hey, no.
Hello, Diana.
Marsha told me she wouldn't be coming home. I was like, oh, I told you she'd be home.
You look nice.
Oh my gosh, you look gorgeous as always.
Oh, please. How have you been?
Doing good. Say hello to everybody.
The moment Diana realized she was live on YouTube. All right. So anyway, sorry. Hey. Sorry about that. You deserved it though. Anyway, pilot, look, here's what I really think about our pilot program. I think there's a lot of stuff out there right now, and there's a lot of noise, and there's a lot of places to go, and a lot of things to think about, and a lot of voices to listen to. And I think it's totally important. I also just know that after 25 years of doing this job, and the last 4 or 5 years really specializing in pilots and selling pilots and setting up pilots and working on shows and stuff, that I discovered it took me a long time to crack what makes a feature. But like once I did, I started being able to sell features like pretty regularly. Not everyone, but pretty regularly. You know, I was able to like, you know, get married and have kids. And with TV, I knew that there was something out there to find. There was some path to find about how to make it and how to sell it and pitch it. And so I forced myself to sort of study it way quicker than I did with features. You know, I was like, okay, you don't have the luxury of many years and hit or miss here to like figure this out. So I just started studying my friends who were selling pilots and pilots that were being bought, and the great ones that I loved from the past. And I did a really in-depth study of them. And there's no set structure to what a pilot is, but there is a certain set of things that every pilot does. And it's like, that's what we really talk about, is like, here's what a pilot does, you know? It's not like scene by scene, walk you through your thing or how to break this moment or this or that. We do all that stuff. But the real thing that you're going to take away from this thing is like, oh, you know, there is actually a template out there of what every pilot from the Dick Van Dyke Show to Breaking Bad to Abbott Elementary has done. You know, and some of them hide it really well, and some of them make it totally obvious, and it's right there in their structure, and you can feel it, but they all do it. And so it's like, once you become kind of aware of that, try to create a technique where it's like, now I know what questions to ask myself. I don't have to just sit here and say, well, what's next? Now I know the questions that I need to ask myself to take this idea, this story idea, or these characters and these scenes and moments that I'm thinking about, and transform them into a pilot that works and moves like pilots. I just really believe in Carl Jung. Number one, because he actually lived and there's no reason not to believe in him. But number two, it's not like some ephemeral concept. It was a real person. But number two, you know, he really had this thing to say about the collective unconscious. And I really just think it's like, we have all watched the same movies and TV shows together, but separately, all of our lives. And they've informed in us a sort of an idea of what structure is or what a pilot does and all those things. And it was analyzing those and hitting upon these templates that really sort of like helped me figure out how to do this job, not just like better, but how to like do it more consistently sales wise, like, which was the real trick. So yeah, so that's what it's all about for me. Is just like, let's run through this thing and let me show you an analysis of what every pilot you love does, even though the best ones make you feel like they couldn't possibly be doing it. When I explained that even like Abbott Elementary had these same characteristics, and I explained the characteristics, I was told very plainly no, that it was not the case. But then when you go through it, you see it is so buried and subtle, but they're all there. And to me, that's like one of the beauties of it. It's like one of the greatest shows that's heralded by everybody. The beats are so obvious of what it's doing. You're like, oh my God, this is like the little, you know, this is the guidebook on how to do it. It's so obvious. And then a show like Abbott, which does everything so well and so like sneakily well too, like they really, you know, get some things in the writing, you know, across that that you kind of only pick up later. Sometimes some people, it's like they buried it so far in there because they were telling their story, but damn, there it all was, you know. So yeah, I feel very confident about this pilot thing, mostly because I've seen it work for me and now others too. And so like that, like
I know, you know, over and over, pilot structure, that was a thing that launched this because
right,
you know,
right.
yes.
Yeah. Oh,
I'm
well.
still crossing fingers for mine, but yeah.
There's
Like,
some
I'm telling
alternate
people.
universe where I just really sucked that day, and Marsha was just like, "Oh, this guy's a chump," and you know. Anyway, but yeah. So anyway, it's a good one. I just really believe in it. The pilot and the feature ones that we do, to me, are both pretty special because they're just coming from like 25 years of practical professional experience. You know what I mean? It's like they're not coming from a place of like, I'm pretty sure this is how it goes, or this is like, these are all like tales from the front. You know what I mean? It's like, so yeah, that's why I feel good. Anyway.
And so, yeah, it's not to be specific to 1 hour drama on
Oh no.
a network or streaming or, you know, Amazon or Hulu or whatever. It's just that with every pilot needs to have one way, shape, or form to deliver the message. And so when people hear structure, if you guys are interested in the future, Jeff goes over pilot structure more of in a broad stroke that they all need to have, but not necessarily the act one here, act two, because they all are very, like procedurals, very, very specific, you know.
If you knew what I actually watched on TV, you would just laugh your ass off. Like it's just like whatever your perception is of what a horror writer watches at home while they're like chilling and doing their thing. It's like, oh my God, you're just so wrong.
it's like the gourmet chef. It's like Gordon Ramsay eating Taco Bell. I mean,
no, it's completely the opposite. But I've spent the last 2 years just lost in Cheers. You know what I mean? And it's like, Cheers is full of so many great writing lessons, like Frasier before it, just like full of these amazing things. So there's great stuff to find in everything. So, you know, I just try not to be I would never turn myself off to any influence, you know, like you never know where the next great thing. I resisted Parks and Rec for a long time because I just thought, oh, it's like Office Part 2. But then when I finally was like persuaded to watch it, by the creator of Kevin Can Go F Himself, by the way, my friend Valerie, who finally convinced me to watch it. I was like, oh my God, what an entire world here. This is amazing. So yeah, don't shut yourself up to stuff. I just want to say last thing before we roll, Marsha. A lot of people, you know, the last thing you should ever be in this industry is one of those people who says, oh, if you haven't seen Casablanca, how can you blank, blank, blank? Or if you haven't seen Raiders of the Lost Ark or Singing in the Rain, how could you possibly blank, blank, blank? And it's like, that is so not the right thing. Like you could come in with just your own gut and your own creative things and do something amazing. I always believe that. The only reason I like the stuff that's out there and all the older things, like both in TV and in movies, like there's just thousands of free lessons to learn out there from this giant catalog of stuff that was done, like hung up on a story point, hung up on how to do a character, hung up on how to tell us, you know, how to break a pilot. There are like thousands of beautiful examples out there in the history of Hollywood entertainment and global entertainment that can teach you, you know? So it's like that, what is the value of old stuff? The value of old stuff is like these people who went before you learned some great lessons. Yeah, so anyway.
And we do have a good morning. Jeff Seidman had a question. He said, if you had to choose one pilot that exemplifies what you're talking about, what would it be? And he says, hello.
Oh, for the
hi everyone.
For the template, Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad is so the template that it's absurd. Like it's almost like, oh, these moments just sit and exist there. Jeff Seidman, by the way, is an old friend of Mike Flanagan's and a talented writer and co-creator of the very original Oculus short that started the whole Flanagan ball. So what's up, Jeffrey Seidman? How you doing? So,
we should have him come back and guest with us on a Breaking Story.
Oh, we had a great time. It was so sad. I felt really bad. We were on a train together from Philly to New Orleans, and I won Flanagan from Seidman in a poker game. And that was the whole, yeah, well, that was the whole thing. So I felt really terrible about that. So plus I cheated. So anyway.
Oh my goodness, it's on. Okay. If you guys have any other questions, link it down below. But yeah, so yay. Well, thank you, because that explains to a lot of people like how our pilot program is. So basically, is you're just giving them the nuts and bolts that everything has to have so that they can put their story together, and those real specific formatting differences from network to network platforms. Yeah, that is, you know, that's the niche part. You know, yes. Ideally.
You do your script, you're going to hook up with producers. There was one time where I was pitching a movie and there were 5 different producers attached to different studios, and each one of them had different tweaks and versions. It's like that, you know, you'll get there. Like, it's, you know. And
by the way, Jeff says, I'll never forgive you.
Nice. Oh,
he's got beef. So yeah. But yeah, if you guys are interested in the pilot program, you know, in our emails, info@jhsessions.com, you see where we're at, you know, we're on Twitter. And the feature program is, you know, there's more structured, set structure with feature, you know.
Yes. And features are much clearer with structure, by the way. like there is a template that you could lay across 93% of movies made since Buster Keaton's The General, you know?
And I think what a lot of the questions come, especially for the newer writers, is they're looking at a story and not looking at the structure of it. It's like a cook. It's a frying pan. You can do pasta and steak in the same pan, you know, completely different dishes. And that's what Jeff is about, giving you guys tools to be able to do your story regardless, you know, consistently. The what?
Now I'm just hungry. I really needed that.
And yes, so, and then we are, and we'll be rolling back our feature development program, probably, I think, ideally around November, December. So still working on breaking story dates, and also for some of the brand new writers. You guys maybe have just started your first script or trying to outline. We're going to put something together. We had something called Breaking Story ABC that worked really well, and we're just kind of fine tuning that. And so what we're trying to do is make more time for Jeff to do the real hands-on and just moving more of the lecture stuff on just straight to video. So that's where Jeff excels best. And if you guys have not participated in Breaking Story, or we're hoping to see him on the live pages where he's just working through a pilot or outline, it is amazing. And just have to give you and just give you kudos, because he's going to read like 120 pages, 6 different stories for one of the classes. The amount of story the man can cover creatively is just amazing. No, it really is amazing. People don't know. I'm like,
if anybody is tracking at home, just so you know, 174 more hours and I finished my community service. So
yes, exactly. Yes.
I can clear my name and get back to my regular voting rights. So
yes.
thank you in my community service.
No, and and I'm excited. And one other thing too, we do have a very special guest. He's become a Twitter friend. So because a lot of our writers are, doing historical periods. Most of them are obviously drama, but a lot of Westerns. And he's also written animation, feature animation, produced with Spielberg, and biopics. And I'm just so excited. So our special guest that Jeff and I will be interviewing next Wednesday morning in lieu of this is going to be John Fusco. So if you guys know Young Guns 1 and 2, Young Guns 3 is on on the horizon. He's going to be, Phantom with John Legend, Broken with Crossroads.
I literally skipped high school one day to go see Young Guns. So I'm really looking forward to talking about it.
Oh my God,
vivid memory. And I remember the popcorn, Marley Station Mall, the Haribo gummy bears. I remember the entire experience. It was amazing. So yeah, can't wait. So
I know, and you know what? I just have to say I'm so embarrassed, but I'm just I have to ask Emilio Estevez, the biggest crush on Emilio. So yeah, I'm
this is the only guest we've ever come in where Marsha's all flushed. I know. She can't contain herself.
He worked with Emilio. And
just please come join us next week. This one's for Marsha, I promise. So it's gonna be it's gonna be fun. So listen, we appreciate everybody here. Thank you all for being a part of it. We really, come back anytime. If you can help us spread the word about our little YouTube channel, we're really trying here to create a giant repository of free screenwriter information. You know what I mean? So, if any help that we can get in moving this thing forward, really, really appreciate, and all of you. And hopefully maybe we come back next week and have lovely things to say about the strike. You know what I mean? Let's find out. So fingers crossed. It's time.